So welcome to our looking at what our classroom looks like from a physical classroom, that transition from that physical classroom into the online classroom, looking at our Google, the G Suite. My name is Mike, and with me is Marcy. She might be above me, depending on how you have your screen set up. We're both senior learning leaders at GSuite, and to give you a little bit of background about GSuite, we're a professional development company based out of South Jersey. And one of the things we really try to do is have educators rethink learning by looking at a variety of different solutions. But today we know that given the COVID situation, we're looking at a very specific into transforming our classroom into online. So let's go through some logistics, and then we will dive into our content for today because we know that you are all very busy. So like on our agenda, we're going to dive into both the pedagogical as well as the technical logistics for the day, just so you know how to operate the system and you are ready to go. Then we're going to really dive into Google for Education, looking at Classroom, and we're going to be looking at some of the other apps as well. Really, our goal today is to connect what are those pieces in Google Classroom and Google for Education that align or connect to what you do in your physical classroom. So we're going to be kind of looking at this overview of what you have available. Together, we are going to be spending about 55 minutes or so. But 45 of those minutes are going to be content specifically. The last 10 minutes are going to be Q&A. So by the end of today, you're going to explore Google Classroom's functionality. How does it work? What is it? What do I need to know? We're also going to look at some strategies to engage students with collaboration and discussion. So we're going to be looking at some of those specific features, as well as a couple other apps, as well as just learn how to set realistic expectations. So there's a lot of factors involved today. We hope that you take a few pieces from it. So let's dive into that technology logistic piece here. So feel free to ask questions at any point today. If you look at your bottom of your screen, you'll see that there's a Q&A box. Please direct all of your questions to that box. There's about 46 of us in our group right now, but what we'll tend to see is that number is going to rise. So if you put those questions in the chat, it's a very good chance we might miss them just because people are sharing resources or ideas. So please try to direct all of your questions into the Q&A. I will be moderating the Q&A as well as the chat. So please note that if I do not answer your question right away, it may be that I'm waiting for the end because it's a question that everybody would really benefit having a conversation about. So the other piece here is your chat. Now, many of you have already discovered the chat, which is great, but you'll probably notice that if you look at that little blue button where it says 2, it might just say all panelists. What that means is that just me and Marcy get to see it. So if you could change that to everyone or all panelists and attendees, that will ensure that all of the participants today, now up to 51, are able to see whatever resources you share or any comments that you make. A couple other pieces, if you look on the top right-hand side of your screen, you might be able to toggle between your view, being able to see both Marcy and I, or just the speaker. So at this case, you might just see me. Now, let's talk about the recording. There's 2 reasons why I'm telling you about the recording. Number 1, we're practicing good digital citizenship, being online and letting you know that everything is being recorded. Secondly, you will receive an email within the next 24 to 48 hours with a recording of this particular webinar that you can use for your professional learning communities, for yourself, or for whoever you think will really benefit from this. We just ask that you let us know so we know how far our reach is going. We cannot, unfortunately, give you an actual copy of the slide deck because we're going to spend most of our time in our tenant showing you around Google Classroom and some of the different apps. However, I will be dropping resources that you can make copies of and you can use for planning tools into the chat as we go along. So if you have any questions, again, just to summarize, put them in the Q&A, but we will be staying active in the chat as well as the Q&A box. Now, Marcy, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Let's give our context for the day.
All right, so good morning. So we want to give you the context through the eyes of Mrs. Aronson. She's a 5th grade elementary teacher who, like you, is in this situation where school is closed and we're asking to go online, and Google Classroom is what they're saying to use. So she did a couple things. She made an inventory of things she had, materials, resources, content. She set up her norms or procedures and routines to develop that community and promote communication. And she set up the assessments that she'd like them to complete. And so we're actually going to explore how she set up her online learning experience using Google Classroom and the GSuite apps. So I'm going to pop out of there for now. And let's just kind of first of all talk about Google Classroom. What is Google Classroom? It is a platform that allows you to use the other tools that are part of your Google, GSuite for Education apps, and lets you bring them into one place. You're able to streamline assignments. You're able to set up collaboration. You're able to facilitate communication. You can distribute assignments. You're able to give feedback on those assignments and even have private conversations with the kids about their work. So we're going to go ahead and see what she set up. And Mike, if he hasn't already, will drop into the chat. If you've never set up a classroom, the first time you go into classroom.google.com as a teacher, yet you will have the plus in the upper right corner and you will be able to create a class. And it'll just walk you through choosing your names. So here's her class. It's a 5th grade science class that she set up. And she's going to use this for those things we just talked about. Quick little tour. The stream is a place that allows the teacher to communicate information. It also records when teachers post new materials. Depending on your settings, students are able to comment or even ask questions up here. Your classwork tab is kind of the main place that you're going to spend in Google Classroom. This is where you can share materials, assignments with all types of files. You can give quizzes through Google Forms and other tools. And there are some other tools that even tie into Google Classroom. It also allows you to bring people together. So in our case, you will see there are 3 teachers here. You can have more than one teacher. And when you add other teachers, they're going to be able to work with you in this classroom. Some schools are even asking that in these remote circumstances that the principal be, or administrative assistant be, a co-teacher in your class just so they can kind of see what's going on. You also have your students and a form of communication here. And we won't really dig into this one today, but there is a grading section. Most of you are going to be required to put your grades, if you're doing traditional grading, in a different location. So before we dig too deeply in here, I want to just show you these. Couple things that you need to consider, and we'll kind of look at how Mrs. Aronson did this actually in classroom. There's the need to establish what are your norms as a teacher, and then what are the norms for the kids. Things like communicating the expectations you have for your kids. How often are you posting? How often are they supposed to try to respond and turn in work? When's it due? How are they responding to each other? Are they going to be using email to get in touch with you? That depends on your situation, but you need to decide those things and define them for your students. Posting assignments. Maybe you're going to post at 8 a.m. every Tuesday morning, or whatever it is that either your school has dictated or you have set up for you and your students. Be very clear with the kids. As we all know, this is a stressful time for them, for us, and just kind of our world in general. So making things as clear as possible is helpful for the kids, for you, and for their families. Providing feedback. Are you going to have things returned with feedback within 24 hours by a certain day of the week? Just give some idea of when they can expect that. Are you going to conduct some sort of office hours? Will you be available? You could share that out through Google Calendar with things like appointment slots, Google Meet for video chat if that's allowed by district rules. And please, I want to note this carefully. Be sure you continue to follow all of those online safety things. That's so, so important that we don't lose sight of not just good digital citizenship, but not lose sight of what our district requires as far as student privacy, faces, video, etc. The other thing you need to establish is, what do you expect of the students? What are the norms for them? How are they expected to be responsible digital citizens? What are your expectations? For example, are they allowed to discuss non-school stuff in Google Classroom? During typical times as a teacher, my rule was, this is a classroom place. We discuss classroom things. I might be willing to relax that and revisit right now. So what are your norms? What are their rights and responsibilities as digital citizens? What should they expect, and how should they be behaving? How will things be handled if they don't use tech positively? For participation, How are you going to check that the kids are engaged or involved? Maybe that's something like a discussion board where they answer questions, a Jamboard, which we'll show you in a little bit, which is a virtual whiteboard. It's a Google tool. Maybe they're doing collaborative assignments. Maybe they're doing a video chat. Giving them ways to participate, give their opinion, and deepen their learning. How are they helping others? We all know that sometimes our kids are far more comfortable with the tech than we are. So those kids who are really comfortable with it can help others. Maybe they can reach out or a kid can post a question about something with tech and another student can answer, so that we're working together as a classroom community. And finally, what about turning in assignments? Again, how are you holding them accountable for the work? How are you holding them accountable for things on time based on the schedule you develop with your kids? So we'll pop back out of here and head over into classroom again, because I want to start to look at how Mrs. Aronson set up this class to promote classroom community, the communication, and the assessment pieces. So we're going to kind of look at how those things can be accomplished here in Google Classroom. So let's talk communication. And I kind of mentioned this earlier, but I wanted to show you a little bit of it. In the stream, things like maybe asking a question just to kind of give the kids a place to check in that day. Maybe something about what is the best food you have eaten. And please know your populations. If you're worried about your kids having scarcity of food, that is not the question I would be asking. But know your kids. Maybe it's, you know, how are you doing with quarantining? Or what's the most fun thing you've done while you're quarantined? But some way that allows your students to engage. Giving them that place to build community. I don't know about you, but we've been home for a couple of weeks now. And a lot of this, there's a loneliness when we don't get to see people face to face other than our families who we love dearly, but are all right outside my office right now. It's going to be interesting to see cabin fever. So how can you help your kids deal with those emotions? You're able to do things like go into classwork, and you have a lot of options on Create. One of those being a question. So maybe I just want to do a quick little poll, and I can do multiple choice or short answer. So I could ask something like, what are you planning to do this weekend? It could be classroom based. It could be something content based. And I'm just going to go ahead and ask that question. Yep, that's okay. I'm not grading right now. And so the kids then can click in and answer a question. And so keeping communication. Discussion posts. Again, are you going to allow your kids the ability to start these? One of the things I want to make sure teachers are aware of, even if you've already used Classroom before, it's not uncommon for teachers in the gear that's actually in each class to come into their settings, and they will turn off this setting right here and say that only teachers can post or comment. And for some people in their particular situations in their classrooms, I totally get it. But you really may want to give that chance for communication to your kids and establish your expectations about what that communication looks like. And okay, good. I was hoping it wasn't going to slow down on us. Another thing you're able to do is use things like Google Meets, if it's permissible in your district, to do video conferencing. By using Meet, you're staying within the Google platform. They've added some of the paid features for free through at least July 1st for us, giving us the ability to record things, which is powerful. And if you haven't seen and you're using Meet, they're also adjusting some of the functions to better allow teachers to control what goes on as far as kids and microphones and being able to kick other people out. Those updates should be rolling out in the next week or two, maybe 3 weeks tops. So don't be surprised when you see that hit. How are we using this area to build community? Maybe I'm giving them a talk stem for the discussion board. Something like something I learned about, and we're just going to write the word topic here because I don't have a great one in my head, and post that and allow them to post comments underneath and talk back and forth to each other. That's part of what they're missing. If you're using Gmail or some other mail program, How about how are you communicating with them? Maybe you're sending things through Gmail as a form of keeping check and building a little bit of community with them and checking in on them, especially if you want to do it privately. This online classroom is a place where they get to build community. You may even set up smaller groups. Maybe you're going to give assignments to small groups and give them things to do that again, or to do that where they can communicate. Because remember, in an assignment, I can select just certain students to get the work. And so maybe I'm going to make some smaller communities to work together. Some of you may be worried about your kids who have some special needs. That's another way, maybe pairing them up with someone that they can work with. Don't forget that you have surveys or quizzes with forms. I wouldn't use them for community, but if you just want to do a quick little survey, see how things are, or maybe find a way to check in on what your kids need and allow them to respond without the other kids seeing. The other big piece that has become interesting, I think, for us in this new normal is, what does assessment look like? Because there's always the story of, well, but if I give them a typical Google Forms quiz at home, then they can cheat, and I'm going to use air quotes there, they can cheat because they are able to communicate with each other, because most of them have their cell phone, mine's sitting off to the side, and they can communicate with each other. So what about that? So some of this is going to require maybe planning or assessing in a different way. Please remember to follow any guidance from your school, district, or board. But students can do things like give feedback. So if I'm in a doc or slide, I can give feedback. I also have rubrics for assessments. I can do things like having the kids present. I can use forms to chunk up tests if I want to do that. Remember to watch the stakes you're using with those tests. You can do things like I lost my word there. You can do things like Socratic seminars if you have the ability for the kids to meet and talk. If you're still giving typical tests, there are timed tests and forms. If your kids are on school managed Chromebooks, you may even be able to lock them where they can't open other stuff. Of course, at home, they may still have other stuff on the side. And you can put papers and projects in docs and slides. So we're going to dive into some of what Mrs. Aronson did here as a teacher for her students to use. One of the first things she did is something we talked about a little while ago. She built some norms. And so she gave the students some discussion norms, things like responding in full sentences, helping to propel conversations instead of just things like okay, or yeah, or I agree, and using their accountable talk stems. And if I back up here, she added the accountable talk stems. Now, in this case, what we see is basically a picture that looks like her bulletin board that she took. And she's given the kids little kind of stems to start answering and responding, to each other. I agree with so-and-so, Mike, because, and telling why, so that she's helping the kids to learn how to push their conversations along. Any files like this you can share as you set up your expectations become extremely important for your kids. Notice too, organization in classroom. Topics are being used here to sort things. On this one, it didn't get a topic, so it's just loose at the top. Now, let's take her little unit and look at, first of all, she's got to decide, how do I take what I do on an everyday basis when I have kids in front of me and transform that into my Google Classroom when I don't get to see my kids? Now, you don't have to read every word on this. Mike's going to be wonderful if he hasn't already been, and he will share a link to this with you. So just to briefly look at it, what you see is that she's going to go with reading and video, and that can be built in a Google form, and I'll show you that in a moment. Whole group participation, she's decided will be done with Jamboard. She's going to provide new terminology via Google Sheets. There will be an exit ticket as a question, and then homework as a Google Doc or assignment. So she broke down what she needed to do. Notice she also had her objectives and standards. Just a note, if your school has not provided guidance, one of the things we can't stress enough to teachers right now is it's not likely you're going to cover the same amount of material. You're going to be picking and choosing. You may be reworking the way information is shared or presented. And so thinking carefully about how that can be done becomes really, really important in this time. So let's look at what Mrs. Aronson did. Here's her invasive species unit. The first thing she did was set up solving the zebra mussel crisis. And she asks them to share their ideas about how to save it and anything that can help with the crisis. If they can link their ideas to anyone else's for connections they see. She expects them to respond to at least one other idea and asks them to continue with their discussion norms. A deadline is given for when their initial idea and their follow-ups are due. So she's setting very, very clear guidelines here. Remember that you have the ability to add instructions. I've been known to put 1 period and like a statement, 2 period and a statement. So like if there are steps to follow, you can even set it up so it's very clear for your kids. Now I want to point out those accountable talk stems are right here. Yes, they're posted above, but we love our kids and we know our kids. If you can keep everything together in one place for them, that makes it easier. And Classroom allows you to add multiple files to an assignment. You also see the discussion norms, which we saw earlier. They're posted for the kids. And she gave them a Google Jamboard. So if you're not familiar with Jamboard, I think more teachers will be familiar with Jamboard after this than ever before. If you went and looked it up online, you would find that Google actually does sell an interactive board called Jamboard. But you don't need the board. You just need the software, which is already part of your GSuite for Education account. Note for yourselves, technical note, if you try to get to this and it doesn't open, then that's probably because your Google admin never turned it on. Sometimes the admins will set things and they don't really go back until somebody says, hey, I need this, or there's something that needs to be adjusted. And this is a simple service, it's an on or off. So it's worth asking if you don't have access. This allows the students, and you can tell we were super engaged here, but we were able to use the pen tool to write. We were able to add sticky notes of different colors. So we'll go orange today. Whoops. I don't know about you guys, but this feels like the longest Friday ever to get to. I know we've all been running crazy. I can add pictures. And unfortunately, it's running a little slow. By the way, if you didn't know and you had a lot of trouble with Google yesterday, Google was having major outages. They claim 99.9% uptime, and that's pretty true. But when it goes out, we are usually scrambling. You can actually search through Google, use your Drive, and pull files. And finally, if you wanted to use this as a way for students to share information and present in a Google Meet and share their screen, they have a little laser pointer where they can show things off. You also have the ability to add multiple, I wouldn't call them slides, but that's kind of what they are. They call an individual file a jam. So we're looking at the solving the zebra mussel problem in the Hudson River jam, but you can add multiple screens to your jam. And so this gives kids the ability to either work together collaboratively or they could each build their own. The other thing I encourage teachers to think about, especially if you're a math teacher, it's really hard sometimes for math teachers to move this stuff online and feel like they're effective. This would give you a pen. If you've got a mouse you can connect, that's probably the best bet, because if you're like me, I'm kind of spastic with a trackpad on a laptop. But then you could actually come, and we're going to do some super complicated math today because it's Friday. So I could come in and actually show math, and I would actually be showing them things probably with steps. You might even do one on the first slide and then ask each child to put their name on a slide and show you a problem that they work on. So those are some ways that Jamboard can be useful. Then she came to what is an invasive species. She asked them to answer the questions in the form as they read the texts and watch the video. They have to answer in complete sentences, and everything can be found in this information. They are reminded to reference them as you answer, because that's a huge skill that as teachers we keep impressing upon our kids. And again, we have a due date, and you can actually create rubrics in Google Classroom now. This one's just a sample, so it's not super set up, but you could come in and set up a rubric so they understand what you're looking for. And I want to show you this form because if you haven't played with forms a lot, there's some really great examples here. You have the ability to add text. Teacher gave the source, asked them to explain in their own words, gave some more information to read, again, a question, dropped in a science video about their topic, and then continued with some questions. So a Google form doesn't have to be about a test necessarily or a quiz, but it can very much be about giving the kids a chance to interact with some information, and it makes it a nice clean place to put what they need. Then the teacher gave a vocabulary map and asked them to complete it, that these are terms they'll need. And again, we have a clear due date. So we're continuing that communication. We're looking at how we can get information and assessment. So the teacher used the slides in a non-traditional manner. Slides don't have to be about one person presenting. So what we see are vocabulary maps with an instruction that says, complete the vocabulary maps. Slide 2 is a template and slide 3 is an example. When we look at slide 2, what we see is they have vocabulary word, the part of speech definition, a picture that reminds them of the term. They have to give the definition in their own words, and they have to give a sentence that uses the word. What they've then done is they've gone to an example. And so this is the word, this is the slide for adapt. You see that it's a verb, you see the definition, you see in their own words. I love the sentence, I'm doing my best to adapt to our digital classroom, which is where I think a lot of us are right now. And you have a picture, and they even dropped in something to kind of circle it so that someone could see, hey, there's that fish, and I don't know his name, but there's that fish, and I want you to see he's kind of hiding, he has adapted. Then what the teacher did was set up different slides with different words the kids need. Now I played on this one the other day and I dropped in a picture of a predator. I didn't complete my work. I was a naughty student. So obviously I did not meet my expectations for Mrs. Aronson. But showing you that things can be done in a different manner and you can still collect information. The teacher could also choose, if they wanted each of the kids to do this, they could actually go into Classroom and set it up. I'll come into this edit mode so you can see. Right now, this one is set, actually it is set that way. Each student will get a copy, or remember, you can't change it once it's set like that, but when you're setting up an assignment, you have 3 choices. You have view, which means they look at it and don't touch. Edit, which means we all play together on the same slide deck. And that would be also possible here. Maybe you assign each child a slide number. Or you say, when you go in, pick a slide you want to work on and put your name on it. And then they do the work and you know who did it. The other option you see here is each student will get a copy. I'm going to tell you the #1 mistake that happens with this, especially if you're new to it or if you're like me as a teacher in a rush, because you know they're always calling you during your planning period when you're setting up. If you're going through the setup process and you forget to click the drop down arrow that allows you to choose each student will get a copy, and you click save, you cannot go back and edit it to each student will get a copy. You actually have to delete the assignment and start a new one. The reason for that is when you do this the first time and you click save, what happens is Google is in the background basically acting like a copy machine in Google Drive. They take your file as a teacher, they make a template, and they put a copy of that in each student's drive in the appropriate folder for this class and for this assignment. And they even include the student's name on the assignment, which is super awesome because then you don't have to worry about whose work it is. We also have things like questions. Again, we see our discussion norms and our accountable talk stems. They're asked to conduct research to answer some questions. They're told that they need to be sure to link their sources in the answer, post by noon on Thursday, respond by 11:59, I'm guessing that's PM on Thursday, to at least one person, and there are your norms. And so they come in and they are going to go to the question, and as a teacher, I can come in and see what their question is. So you're able to get in. just beware or be aware, you are not required or held to grading in here. If you are putting your grades in another location, some teachers choose to not grade it in here. Some teachers choose to drop their grades in here and then transfer them over to their learning management system. Sometimes that's faster. It just kind of depends on what you're comfortable with. A few lucky schools are on school information systems that actually are starting to link up and sync with Google Classroom, and they're working on adding more, but that's a pretty new feature this school year. Finally, for this unit, she gave them an assignment to write a 1-paragraph explanation of how they plan to stop the growth of the zebra mussel population in the Hudson River in the cell below. And they're given a due date again, and they're given the Google Doc, and they're asked to write a paragraph and given a setup. One of the other things I would highly recommend to you as a teacher is, instead of just having kids create blank docs and give you a paragraph, you can lay this out like this teacher did. Mrs. Aronson asked them for their name, their period, the date, and then gave them the question and put a place for them to write it inserting a table. So the better you can structure assignments, the easier you make it for your kids to understand that process and where you expect them to go. I'm trying to make sure I didn't skip anything, Mike. And we can't stress this enough. These are examples. It may look different for you, and you've been in chat, so I don't know here, Mike, but if you have little kids, that's become an issue too, because a lot of even the littles are transitioning to Google Classroom. You may be giving things that they look at, and maybe their parents help them submit a picture back, or you just give them things to do and the parents send a picture through some other platform or email. Be creative at this point. It's really important that we figure out how to support our families in the best way possible while still trying to cover some of those objectives. And your planning is going to be the key piece. If you didn't get to join us, there's another webinar that has been done. And Mike, I don't know what next week's schedule looks like. I don't know if we've got any more of those on the books, but Mike will talk about at the end where you can find the webinar list. One of the first things we talked about with teachers was how do you kind of figure out where to go and what to cover, because that's going to adjust as well. So Mike, I don't know if I just was talking too fast today, or I've done this webinar a few times and I've got it down pat.
No, that's okay. So actually, there's a couple questions that I think it's that we should address, and then you can show us performance-wise what that might look like.
Perfect.
So the first one is that so Carol was talking about having her students send pictures via email.
Mm-hmm.
So Carol, I wanted to encourage you to even use Google Classroom for that, because students can attach art files or picture files such that you can do all of your organization within Classroom, so you don't have to have your learners submit to you something by email and then go into Classroom and then mark submit. I would encourage them to just attach that, and Marcy can show you how to do that right now.
So yeah,
the tools about Classroom is that you does collect your multimedia files.
So what you're actually looking at, you might have noticed as the screen was flashing by you, I was flipping over to a different account. This is an account I used my son's name, so I know it was one I could safely play with. And this is a sample student account, and I don't even remember necessarily what's in here, but we'll pretend it's this one. And I drop something in. When students go into viewing their assignments, one of the things they have options to do is up here it says your work, add or create. On any assignment, they have the ability to drop in additional files. So he could do add or create. He could go to a file, which would be from the computer, and he could drop it in. If he's on his phone, which a lot of the kids will use this on mobile devices using the app, they also could take the picture from their mobile device and then attach it right into the assignment. And I don't want to go digging through my computer because God knows where I would find a picture at this point. There's so much going on.
And actually, can you stay on the screen really quickly? So
yes.
Someone asked earlier about if you add private comments, do students see it? Do just the students see it? So I had commented back in that question that if you are in that private comment box, yes, your learners that you are intending that comment to go to will only see it. But if you notice down at the bottom, there's also an add class comment. So I had mentioned that Google is very good at labeling which ones are private and which ones are class, but just be aware of that because sometimes your learners don't realize that.
Yeah.
So making sure that you let your learners realize that class comments go to everyone and private comments only go to you. Because I've actually had a few situations, my students were trying to get me and they posted it to the class when they quickly realized that they fixed it. However, with younger learners, they may not realize that.
Yeah. And please note, if you are going in and grading in this platform, it's very clear that when you open a student's work and look at it, that the comments you send there are private. Those do not go to everyone.
Yes.
And it also allows a student, I'm in as a student right now, so I could say something like, hey, Mrs. H, can you check your email? I sent a question. I like making stuff up on the fly, you know? And so there's the private comment.
And that's actually perfect too. So Carol was saying that some of her younger learners struggle with that submission. So this is what I would encourage, Carol, that how Marcy just put in that private comment. Hey, Mrs. A, I always say your name wrong, Marcy. Miss Marce.
Okay, no, please not that one. Here we go, Mike. Lesson. A bear, like I see a bear. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. You could always say, Miss Marcy, please check your email, and then have the students mark it as done. So when it comes to the teacher marking things as done, it's a lot of work on you to do that. So I would just make that part of your norms. And speaking of Marcy, somebody was saying that they were struggling. They were having students want to fix their work. So yeah, not in a bad way. Like
no.
they felt they made a mistake and are trying to do it. She was having issues with the learners being able to actually do that. Like there was a picture, there might have been a problem.
So here's the really important thing, and this one's a bad example. Well, no, it is. So he didn't actually attach work because you see me just kind of playing. This is a throwaway account. But as a student, if a student tells you they want to edit or work on their work and they tell you they can't access it, here's why. They need to go into the assignment, and right over here, they're going to see the ability to unsubmit their work. And let me explain why this matters. So when a student starts on an assignment, once they attach it into Google Classroom, whether it's I come in and I add a file or I start working on the file the teacher gave me, the teacher can then actually watch the file by going into the assignment and opening it, even though the student's still working. At that point, the teacher's got view access, kids have edit, unless it's a document you shared as all edit together. But what happens is when the student hits submit, they lose edit access to that file, and you, the teacher, now have and control that edit access. So there's two ways to get it back to them. Unsubmit, teachers can also return work, and sometimes that'll free it up. But the best way is just to teach your kids about unsubmit. And I will tell you, I trained mine unsubmit because there were a lot of things I did with kids that were feedback loops. And so they would submit it, I would give them feedback and return it. And or they would need to unsubmit it if they realized they needed to change something first. So that's an important step, and that's a really good question.
Awesome. So Marcy, can you dive a little bit deeper into the, when you are posting an assignment and doing make a copy for students?
Oh yeah.
Somebody was just saying, can you clarify the whole, how their names are automatically added?
Yep.
What does it mean? What does that look like?
So we're going to be super smart. We're going to do sample webinar assignment. So we'll pretend I've given them great instructions. I can set up topics and all of the due dates and categories, but here's the important part. So I can either create something here, meaning I start something new, or I can add it as a teacher from my Google Drive because I am back in a teacher account. So I'm going to just go ahead into Google Drive and I'm going to grab whichever file comes up that makes sense right about now. We're going to be super, I don't want to mess with the others. So there are 3 choices right here. Okay, and that's the ones I was referring to. Students can view, which means directions. Maybe I want to show them a rubric before I start to grade papers, and I want them to see that as I'm handing out the assignment. Those are examples of things they could view. Students can edit. I want them working together, all together on this document or a slide or whatever, a Jamboard. But this make a copy for each student is what we were talking about, that will act like a big old copy machine. So when I'm finished with all my settings, and we'll pretend I've messed with the settings over here, when I click assign, or even if I would schedule it, what will happen is you're going to see this thing. Yeah, that's fine. We're not grading right now. You're going to notice it's slower than usual to post when it says make a copy for each student, because what it's actually doing is actually posting out that assignment. Now let's see if I can cheat it because Hayden's not in here, but let's throw that student account that I know I have access to in here. We're going to invite him and let's see if we can get him up here. Oh, so many windows and screens, yay. So let's go ahead to Hayden's classes. He's been asked to join the class, so he's going to join. I'm hoping that even though he's joining late, it's going to give him a copy. We're about to find out. View assignment. Now, this is another great thing to point out. If you give them something that it makes a copy of, sometimes it takes a minute for it to show up. It does look like it did exactly what we wanted, because what you'll notice is his name, Hayden Abear, and untitled is my fault because that was what it was called. So when I view this assignment, he's going to see that here's his work. It's all made, and I'll click into it. The title is already created. So it gives him a name, and it gives him whatever the file name was. And so now he can type in his answers. He also has the ability to click turn in from here, or when he's finished, he can do it from this window. Either way will do the same thing, and he can turn in his work. And so it's all named, it's all ready, it's all organized, because in the background, when Google created that file, it put it in the proper Google Drive folders. Now, I would not ask kids to go dig in their classroom folder. I used to teach the kids, don't do it, because I had one of my little sweet middle school boys who, I don't understand how you do this accidentally, but he managed to delete his entire Google Classroom folder, which meant all his work as we were coming up to exams was gone. Luckily, I was the Google admin console person for my school, and I was able to restore it because he noticed quickly. Sometimes your admin does have the ability to restore certain things within a certain time period of it happening. So that's a way to make sure everybody's got their own copy, and it even does the work of naming and filing for you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Marcy. Can you show really quickly the two ways of joining a classroom for students? So
yes. So if your kids were with you, this is often the way I would recommend. In my class, I would go to stream, and right up at that top for each class is a class code. You can even make it nice and big for them to see. So the kids would need this code. And what the kids would do is, let's go pick a student account just so you can see. So in his student account, when he's on his home page, he's going to have that plus sign. He would click join class, and he would go ahead and throw in the class code, and that would put him directly into the class. The other option, and the one that you're probably going to want to do with students right now, especially if you're already remote like most of us are, in your People tab, you have the ability to go to students, click on the little button to invite, and type in their name. I'm trying to think who's not in this class already. Come here, Erin. Oh, there we go. We'll grab that one. And I'm going to click invite. Now, what will happen then for the student is, and I'll show you kind of on this one because I think I left one like that on purpose. You'll notice this one says join. That's what your kids would see for each class they've been invited to. I think it's a lot easier when you're remote to send a note to the kids with how to log into Google Classroom if they haven't done that before, and telling them you've been invited to the class, click the blue join button, and I'll go ahead. I don't think I need this anymore right now, so I'll go ahead and click join. It's going to take a moment, and then I'm in the class. Versus having to worry about a code that some of them may type it wrong, they may not copy and paste it correctly. Anything you can do to simplify right now is great.
Thank you, Marcy. So one of the questions we have is, what's the difference between Jamboard and slides? And what are the benefits of using Jamboard, especially when you have younger students?
So I think the biggest thing for Jamboard is kind of just, it's a simple tool, especially if you're talking about little kids. If you're showing something really big to them or something complicated, there's lots of toolbar here. But if I go to, I knew it would pop up. If I go in here, oops, sorry guys, I didn't mean to make you nauseous there. If I go to a new jam, you notice the tools are very simple. Now, if I need kids to do a lot of text, this is not the place I'm sending them. You notice there's no text box. But if I want kids to draw something or put sticky notes or drop a picture in, that's where I'm going to go. Jamboard just is a little bit of a simpler tool, and I've said this, I got to help a high school locally get ready for this process and help their teachers make this shift working alongside them. Keep it simple. What is the tool that does exactly what you need and it's simple? With slides, you're going to have a lot more options. You can come in and do things with all kind of shapes. And you also, by the way, in case you didn't know, there is technically a scribble in Google Slides. So for my older kids, if I hadn't shown them that or they didn't know, that could be worth showing. Slides, though, will give you the ability to set things up like this, where it's really, really easy to do more complicated work. And Jamboard kind of keeps it really simple.
So then what also I would say is that if you're familiar with Microsoft PowerPoint, slides would be the equivalent to PowerPoint. Yep. Jamboard is closer to just having that open, Expo marker slate that you can have your learners interact with. So one of the questions we got, and I was just asking for a little clarification though, Jamboard versus whiteboard. I'm assuming whiteboard is just another type of interactive online whiteboard, but.
So here's why, if you were in the Google platform, we are recommending this one, unless you have something you just love and you're comfortable with. What I've been telling teachers is look for the easiest workflow you can possibly provide right now for your kids. And the fact that I can come into classwork and I could create an assignment and I can say add from my Google Drive. And if I've created a Google Jam, if I've set it up as the teacher, I think I just have that one in this particular file. So pardon me, you're going to see the same one. But it's super easy for me to add it. And again, I can adjust those sharing permissions because those things that stay within this Google platform make that kind of seamless flow. It also means the ability to not worry about where the student put the file and they can't find it later because everything is linked right here.
Great. Thank you.
Sure.
At this point there, oh, no, somebody popped in another one. I didn't see it. Oh, okay. So Kevin said that whiteboard is part of the Google platform. It seems like it's the same, but he hasn't used it though.
And Kevin, Mike will laugh as I say this, I will never pretend to know everything. There's always so much going on out there. There are other tools and apps that can be linked into Google. I've not heard of something called Whiteboard straight through Google, but it could be that it is linked into your Google platform because there are other tools that can be done with. So just keeping it simple for you and your kids. You don't want them having to check 10 or 15 places to find what they need. If you can keep them in one platform, it makes it easier for all of you during this tricky time.
Absolutely.
So let me head back over here. So I think this is a good point to kind of come back and talk about the fact that for Mrs. Aronson, she's looked at how she's going to build her community. She's looked at assessment, and she's probably changed her view on it a little bit. Maybe she's going to pose questions, create forms as quizzes, give assessments through other things like slides right there in Google Classroom. And I can't say this enough, communication is key. Even if you're in the very early phases of this with your kids, just saying, hey, we're working on this. You know, this is where we are right now. I'll send you more information as I have it. But this is how she kind of went through the process of getting ready to be able to teach through Google Classroom.
Absolutely. So as you're kind of thinking about moving into your physical classroom into your virtual classroom, if you're still like, Mike, I still need help. What we realized is that as a company, as a professional development company, we wanted to come alongside of educators and districts and really support you along every step of the way. We realized that there's a need here right now as we're shifting. So we created a program called Remote Schoolworks, and it ranges, and how we can support you ranges in a variety of ways. So for example, we might come in and do some helping you set up your Google Classrooms. We might provide a template and have you kind of figure out how you want to set up your own. If you go to the next one, Marcy, we can also provide what we're calling field guides that kind of give you that step-by-step. How do I create my community? How do I determine communication? What does learning look like in the online setting? But it also includes office hours. So if you feel that you still want a lot of assistance, maybe it's meeting with me and Marcy. Maybe Marcy's going through your Google admin console to audit it to make sure that everything's turned on the appropriate way. Maybe you just want to have conversations about how to do all of this. Maybe there's so many options. There's really so many options. The reason I keep saying that is that we want to provide solutions to the problems that you have. If you have more questions, please just email Alex@Eduscape or me at Eduscape. We do want to support you every step of the way. Now, we're going to hold that up there oh no, it's on this slide too. So the final piece is that we want you to walk away with the message that we are here for you. If you have further questions that you think of 5, 10, 20, 30 minutes from now, tomorrow, the next day, whatever it might be, please send us an email. We would love to answer those questions. We also will be posting events over the next couple days and weeks. Currently next week, we're actually kind of taking a pause on the webinars for the moment, simply so that we can build out some more of the resources for all of you. But please note that all of these resources and webinars that we have completed already are posted on our website as recordings. So please go to our website. You'll see the early education webinar that was done yesterday. You'll see the getting started with Google Classroom the other day. Please go through those, check those out. They will help you. I did post a few more resources in the Google Classroom as well. We're also, with our SchoolWorks program, we are offering 4 very targeted webinars on community, communication, accessibility, and assessment, as well as attaching to the Google apps that really, really help facilitate that type of learning and those types of online learning components. The final piece, actually there's 2 more pieces, just kidding. One of the other pieces is that there's a Facebook group. We realize that educators right now feel very siloed. They feel like they sometimes just need somebody to talk to, share ideas, post troubleshooting issues saying, hey, this isn't working for me. How are you overcoming it? We created a Facebook group that we would love for you to join, simply because we want you to be able to be a part of a community and to also interact with others. Thank you for doing that, Marcy, because it's not in the doc that I have.
You're welcome.
Posting that link, she already did, for you to go ahead and join that group. We did just create it, so there's not a lot of activity on there. That's why. Please get in there, drop your ideas, drop questions, drop solutions, whatever it might be. We want to make this a very active community and reflecting what we're saying to you. Now the final piece is this. You will have a post-webinar survey. Please fill that out. We really do take your comments to heart, and we also like to hone our work around what you need to make sure that we are resourcing you in the appropriate way. With all of that said, thank you so much for spending the 52 minutes with us. We are here for you. We know that you're doing a lot. You can actually request that PD certificate within that survey. That's a great question. But thank you for being with us today. And we want to just encourage you. You are doing a great job. Keep doing what you're doing. Use the tools that you're comfortable with and keep going. We're here for you. Your kids, I know this is a rough time, but you're doing a great job to support them as well as your parents. So have a great day. Have a great weekend. Rest up. Make sure you have that balance. We're here for you, and have a great day.
Take care, everyone. And thanks everybody for all the kind comments in the chat. That means a lot to us. And we'll be here for a minute or 2, but if you don't need us, you are welcome to exit and take that survey. The survey, I'm going to say this out loud, Rachel, the survey will pop up when you exit the meeting. And if you don't exit in about a minute or 2, I'll be exiting everyone.
And if you don't, for whatever reason, see it and it doesn't pop up, you will, when you get your recording a link, you'll also receive another link to the survey if it doesn't work for whatever reason.
And the same to you guys. Stay safe. I lost my Zoom toolbar, Mike. It's gone.
That's okay.
Oh, wait, it's hiding over here this time. Too many screens. All right, everyone, we are going to go ahead and close out. So you should be seeing that link very shortly. Have a good day, everybody. Thanks, everyone.
Bye. Have a good one.